Hello all. Thank you so much for participating in this option number 2 for the professional skills in business, strengths, and infusion into resumes. I apologize that it's taken so long to get this uploaded. We had to work through some technical difficulties on our end and we're good to go. So I've put the video links and I will play them in this presentation. And you'll need to go through this entire presentation in the lecture. I'm hopeful that it'll take about a half an hour and that you will then log into D2L and look for the quiz for this snow day. And there's really nothing other than the submit button on the quiz to be able to do. You'll need stuff out of this lecture to be able to answer it, I think. And from there, I will go in and grade. So if you see a pass in your week 2 attendance, you've done everything you need to do for this course. So, all right, let's move forward as we begin. Professional skills in business, and this is strengths and resumes. We were going to go over pod assignments, and the class will be split into pods. Pods are listed under D2L in content, and it is also linked under the first day class. So look at your pods. We'll get into those as we move forward next week. So nothing you need to do in part of that, but I just wanted to let you know that we will be working out of pods. All right, strengths. So the idea behind strengths is that we're going to do what we do best, and we're going to do that every day. And if we understand where these strengths, especially our top 5, come into play, we will be naturally good at bringing those skills and abilities and strengths into the workplace, and that's what employers are looking for. I'm hopeful today that I will give you some verbiage to be able to infuse into your resumes and in interviews that will talk about those top 5 strengths. I hope you found that the assessment valuable and kind of eye-opening in some respects. I always am amazed by spending 40 minutes and answering a number of questions that it can really get into the heart and give me some information that I didn't really know about myself, and at the same time really believe it to be true. Although some of you are looking at like, woo, what does it mean to be woo, and putting those pieces together, but it really is a very widely used tool as we're moving forward. So strengths. So what are strengths? Strengths look at taking your natural talent. So when I'm doing this exercise, I'm going to ask you to grab a blank piece of paper or sheet of paper that you have, and I'd like you to use your dominant hand. In my case, it's my right hand. And I would like you to write your name, print, cursive, I really don't care, but write your name 5 times with your dominant hand. So it'll take a little bit of time to be able to do that. And now you can do it while I'm talking. I want you to write it with your non-dominant hand. So in my case, it would be my left hand. And I want you, when you're writing that, to kind of think, is it taking you a little bit of time? Is it a little bit awkward? Perhaps you're thinking you should have shortened your name in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes you're thinking it's a bit cumbersome. I know when we do it in a group activity, there's usually some laughing and jovialness that's happening when it's the right hand or your dominant hand. And when it's your non-dominant hand, the room typically gets a little bit quiet and a little bit more reserved because it's taking more effort and concentration to do it with your left hand. And that's exactly what happens with strengths. We have a natural talent or a natural tendency to use one of our dominant hands, and we have a natural tendency to use some of those strengths as they're coming through. So you want to look at how are you using some of those natural tendencies. And then you're going to add, oops, I went too far. You're going to look at that knowledge. So maybe in 3rd grade or so, you worked on some writing skills and some penmanship worksheets to work on cursive or to kind of hone some of your writing. When we look at your academic experience, it's using the knowledge that you're learning in your classes, maybe knowledge that you learned about your resume and how you can update that and change that. So maybe you're naturally good at adding bullets and making sure everything is in a line, and now you're adding the information that you heard from the employer panel to make this stronger. And then we go into, oh goodness, we look at your skills. And we add some of those skills that you've learned, your ability to practice a little bit more, to refine. Maybe you're putting a couple of loop-de-loos on your signature, or you have a certain way that you underscore something or cross a T. Those are all learned skills as it relates to your signature. And we can use that in our work environment too. Maybe it's skills that you've learned or you've had some experience really infusing that knowledge in the workplace. And we put all three of those together, and where they all intersect, that really is the strength. And it says it's something that we've learned, it's something that we've honed, and it's something that's a natural tendency of ours. And we can infuse that, and that becomes a strength. So let's watch this video. It takes me a little bit to get to that. So I'm going to pull this up.
Do you ever wonder why you make the choices you do? Why some things come naturally, while others don't? Why you are drawn to certain activities and not to others? There's a simple but powerful reason: your talents. When you understand your unique talents, you have the power to harness them, and your whole world can change. We see talent in people around us every day. The patterns of thought, feeling, or behavior that give them a unique edge. Sometimes it may even seem effortless. In fact, our talents are the keys to our innate potential. When we tap into them, we act with more confidence, inspiration, and direction. But we often take our most powerful talents for granted, or we may not even be aware of them. That's why the Clifton Strengths Finder was developed, to help you discover your areas of greatest potential. Grounded in more than 5 decades of study, the Clifton Strengths Finder is an invaluable tool designed to help you identify and activate your talents and strengths for greater happiness and success. After completing the assessment, you'll receive a personalized report describing your signature themes of talent and an action plan designed to help you unlock your innate potential. Performing at your best is easier than you may think. When you approach your work, relationships, and community from your personal areas of strength, success follows. So what are you waiting for? Transform your world today with the Clifton Strengths Finder. Unlock your potential.
All right, we got to close out of here. Hold on. There we go. Ta-da! There we go. So I'm hopeful that what we talk about now will allow you to unlock some of that potential.
I'd like to welcome you to this
Oh
presentation
goodness!
on the
Now we have to get back and minimize it here.
My name is Travis Kuzy. I'm an
We don't
ICS
want to listen to
certified
these.
executive coach.
There you go. Now we're back in the game. Perfect. So when we look at, I want to view it. Ta-da. Now we're back in the game. Here you go. Sorry about that. So we want to look at how we can develop those strengths and we can infuse them. The first one is really just understanding what your strengths are and that identification piece. You've done that. You've taken the assessment. You know what your top 5 are. You've submitted them into D2L for us to review. You've done a nice job. We've indicated where we might have some similarities. The second is integration. So in the rest of the presentation, we're going to look at how do we integrate that into your resumes and your cover letters and your interviews so that you can move forward and let employers know that you're really good at these strengths. And then we look at how can we change behavior to really always do what is naturally easy for us and how we can develop these strengths in other areas. Because we know that people who use their strengths every day are 8% more productive and 15% less likely to quit their jobs. And you know how hard it's going to be for you to find that internship and job. We don't want you to quit right away. So we want to use these strengths to be able to find some key strategies and success in those future internships and job opportunities. Great. So your top 5 strengths really are very unique. And once you know what those top 5 are, you can use that for skill improvement. You can also see how you might fit in a team. I know here in Career and Professional Development, we look to be able to say who has what strengths and how can we work really well together. I do a lot of presentations. Part of it is because I'm a strong communicator as it comes together. There's others that are big activators. And some of us that really want to make sure that everybody's getting along and using that harmony strength. So we see how can we use our unique strengths in a team and how can we work to create teams that complement those strengths. And then it certainly will help you in your career search as you're looking for jobs that you might find value in and opportunities that way. So I always ask students to look at your unique strengths, and I'll ask the accounting students to stand up, and you might be able to identify, but I would ask the accounting students if we were in class, and I'd say, if you're thinking about sitting for your CPA, remain standing. If you don't, then sit down, and maybe one or two of 20 students standing will adjust. And then I will ask, if you believe that you'll have to take counting 204 or 206, please stay standing or sit down. And again, there's not much movement in the population standing. If you think you might attend one accounting club meeting, please sit down or stand up. And there, again, not much movement because there's not a lot of uniqueness in terms of the core competencies that the accounting program offered. You all are thinking about sitting for the CPA. You're all thinking about, joining this club, the accounting club. If it was HR, it would be SHRM and a couple of others. You're required to take the same classes from the same faculty. But when we look at our strengths, we can really be unique in that regard. So it shows that 1 in 34 million people have the same top 5 strengths as you. So then I'll ask the class to stand up. So there's 100 students in the class, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to read my first top strength, and it happens to be communication. And if you have communication in your top 5, stay standing, the rest of you sit down. And generally, all but like 10 students stay standing. And then I'll say, okay, now I have individualization. So communication and individualization, if those are in your top 5, please stay standing. Maybe 1 or 2 other students are standing up. So it's really unique to be able to see kind of the popcorn effect that really, truly, of the 100 plus students that are in our class, it's me and one other student who have 2 of the same top 5 strengths. And that's not even going in the same order. So they really are unique, and you can harness it to kind of move forward with some additional information to really sell yourself to employers as it relates to what you're good at. So if we look at business side of it, this really is a strong tool. It is well used in both business and in collegiate systems, and it looks at how many units are using it, how many businesses and employers and employees are touching with this, and in how many countries does Gallup work to be able to use this strengths-based development to hone in on key performances and improvements within the work industry. So here you can see, and then if we look at when they've implemented, we'll call them strength schools or strengths businesses or strengths team. They're certainly seeing some increase in profit and sales. And for those of you that are in HR, perhaps you know that it's very expensive to bring in new employees constantly. So we want to see that turnover to be really low. And and those of you that are in supply chain and operations, you want to know that there's decreased safety or increased safety, decreased incidence of that. And those organizations that have strengths infused are seeing some of that because you're naturally good at that. You're using your talents and your skills to move forward. So that's the identification piece of strengths. Now let's look at how we can integrate strengths into our job search, resume, professional documents, including your cover letter, and certainly into interviewing. People who use their strengths every day are 6 times more likely to be engaged in their work and 3 times more likely to have an excellent quality of life. And that's what we're going for, engagement and excitement in the career path, not just the job that we're choosing. So this slide shows a position description. So you may have seen these. You're going to see these in Handshake when you search for different internships or jobs. You'll see them in D2L under the cover letter assignment. There is a position descriptions for cover letters and for that assignment, and they're responsibilities. This is telling you what are employers looking for, what skills do they want for their internship or their job that they're hiring for, what responsibilities will you be expected to do. So we can see those. This is the area that we're focusing on in terms of hiring and this integration. So I've blown it up. It's a bit grainy and I apologize for that. But I want to show you where your strengths can fit in. So we'll see this on many different employers in some quality positions that they're looking for. And some of them are very easy. We can see communication listed here. That's communication. Obviously, if my strength is communication and I see communication skills are needed, it might be good or I might find enjoyment in that. Then you're going to see some others like adaptability. Adaptability might be one. If I see the word adapt or learn quickly, those are going to be easy and I'm going to say, oh, yep, my adaptability strength certainly will play in, or that learner strength. Now let's use words that aren't directly related. We're seeing if you have intellection or if you're strategic, those three strengths all talk about how you learn and process information. And if you see that learning quickly or being a self-starter, that might show that you might be really good at that. But additionally, you might find some value and some enjoyment in doing a task or an activity like that. Now let's look at maintaining relationships. These 6 strengths here all talk about, they don't say maintain, they don't say relationship other than relator, but those 6 strengths all play into how we maintain and create and develop relationships. So believe it or not, I'm woo, and a woo strength means winning others over. And so that is really important in how I create and win that relationship, but also how I move forward in that. And so you can see there are different elements where we can infuse those strengths in other areas. Now, if you like computer skills and you like the programming or the details that might go into that, that's analytical, consistent, with focus as it relates to problem solving or troubleshooting or the data input in that area. That might be a strength that would say you would find value and you would enjoy doing something similar to this. Here we go under strong organizational skills. Organization is not one of the strengths, but arranger, discipline, and input certainly are. Somebody who has a strong strength in discipline really is very organized to be able to follow through and execute on some of those responsibilities. So you can see how your strengths really fall in to be able to say, would I find value and do I think I would be naturally good at some or all of the position elements that they're looking for? So now I want you to take a few minutes here and you look at this position description and read through the 8 bullets that are listed. Can you find words in here that would match with 1 or 2 of your strengths, of your top 5 strengths? So we might see create and maintain position descriptions. Maybe that creation or that maintaining, it's not relationships, but position descriptions. That might be that organization piece that's coming in. Can you see that performed research and assistance? Does anybody have a strength that might relate or connect to that? Look at your top 5 strengths and see what bullet would they fall into. What does it make sense where it shows that you would have a strong strength? Come over here and we see competitive. I'm certain that some of you have competition as one of your strengths, and that would certainly be an area that you can infuse that. All right, let's look at how we can infuse it, not so much in identifying jobs and careers we might be interested in, but let's look at how we can create and infuse our strengths into our resumes. So the first is that you don't really put bullets or you don't list your strengths on your resume in a skills section or even at the top. And if you're in the Get Hired guide, you might see that there's a couple of samples of resumes that are able to do that. In some fields and in some industries, it is acceptable. Typically in business, it is absolutely not acceptable to list your strengths at the top, and employers would be like, what? What are these words? But they really want you to infuse it and focus it in on your bullet points and really tell a story about how you're using that strength into an accomplishment or a responsibility and how you're moving forward with that. So here you can see some bullets that are on my resume, specifically as it relates to my position with the College of Business and how I lecture and present material to 2 sections of approximately 85 pre-business students. I collaborate, and let me show you how we can infuse strengths into this bullet, and where I'm not saying I have a strength of communication, but rather where am I infusing it? So let's use that communication. Certainly it's in that lecture piece and how I'm able to do it. I can also use communication in how I collaborate with others, and there's communication that's put in how we pull that team together, what we talk about, how we direct our resources in regards to that. I might even advocate that I could do that in that development of lesson plans because that's the communication piece as well. Now we're using the arranger. That's the development piece of it, not so much the lesson planning, but how do I create a tool that's going to be effective? How do I make sure that our lessons create and help you achieve the assignment responsibilities? So that's the arranger piece. When I coordinate different events and programs, I'm also arranging things there. Now connectedness, if I look at the connectedness piece, they're both similar. I work to connect with students one-on-one when we're working on resumes and cover letters. It's also important that I win them over and they have buy-in to what I'm saying, or they believe in what I'm saying, or believe that what I'm telling them employers are saying is important. And it would be really difficult for me to say, I'm a positive people person as a bullet. That's just not a measurable outcome. But instead, you're looking at that positivity piece as being the whole thing and working to make a positive impact on students. It's a positive impact when I'm working with students to connect them with employers, and job outcomes are positive generally. So we're looking at that to be able to say that's my theme in telling the story, not that I would use the word positivity in that bullet. And just as we said in our resumes, we can use any of those strengths to tell the story or to highlight some of our skills in the cover letter as well. All right, so now in class, we had students work in their pods to take a minute to identify one of their bullets and pick the strength. So if it was communication, what bullet can you write on your resume that's going to identify that you have that strength? So it will be in the quiz, FYI, but I want you to think of one skill that you have. One strength that you have, and then what bullet are you writing to highlight that you have that skill and that strength? And you don't have to share, just other on the quiz. All right, we have to jump back to a movie, but we're going to talk about how once you've created your resume, how you can go forward and get some additional feedback that really looks at that content and pulling out some of the data that is in the resume now that you've infused some strengths and you've heard the resources from the Get Hired Guide and you've heard from the employer panel. So VMOC has a smart resume platform. It's a program that we purchase, as do many other leading College of Business schools. And it allows you to get immediate resume feedback 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can also use it to really work to strengthen those bullets. Sometimes I hear students say, oh, you're really good at that bullet development. I should be. I've been doing it for a number of years, but I want to help you get good at that so you can constantly and confidently make changes to your bullets as your positions and responsibilities change. And it allows you to analyze your core competencies. Those are those strengths. That's that talent that we're looking at. Enhance your skills on your resume. Ideally, I would like you to use VMOC before your resume appointment so that you can have that feedback and infuse that into your resume, but also your career advisor can help you understand that feedback back too. So let's take a second. Oh, we jumped way ahead. Let's take a second and jump into VMOC Smart Resume and watch this video.
Is your resume ready for showtime? Come to VMOC and find out. At VMOC, we know that your resume has 8 to 10 seconds to make an impact. That's the amount of time it takes just to type your name and address. So how do you know you'll stand out in that short amount of time? It all starts with scoring your resume and benchmarking it against the competition. VMOC applies data analytics, natural language processing, and artificial intelligence to simulate the way a recruiter reviews your resume so that you can identify the good and the bad areas on it. We help you improve these by providing rich, personalized feedback on core areas such as presentation, impact, and professional skills. Not only that, VMOC provides customized samples for each bullet point to essentially anticipate and answer the recruiter's most commonly asked question: what's the point you're trying to make? And once on the VMOC platform, you can easily share your resume with your mentors, friends, and coaches, making it easy to compare and contrast feedback from others. We have over 1 million resumes uploaded into our system, with more arriving every day. Remember, your resume is the gateway to your dream job, and VMOC is here to help you. Upload your resume to the VMOC platform and get ready for showtime.
a closeout so it doesn't play it this time. Perfect. So please upload into VMOC. Use your feedback. Look to see what score you're at. It's fun, a tool to be able to really enhance your resume, and students that have used it have really talked highly of the service. So I look forward to seeing what feedback you get and your amazing resumes as a result of that. All right. So we did cover letters. I'm sorry, no, we didn't. We did position descriptions, we did resumes, and now we're going to look at how you can infuse strengths into your interviews. So there are several different types of interview questions as you are moving forward with your interview and job search strategies. The first and most common interview question is a traditional or situational, and these are questions that we believe all employers are going to ask. And we can do a lot to coach you with it, and you can answer strong questions regardless of what your experience is. And that is, tell me a little bit about yourself. Another question that they'll ask is, tell us what you know about our company and organization. So that research is really very important to an employer beyond what their front website is, and that information is really get into the heart of what kind of products they do, what do you learn about them, what's in the news that might be positive. So all great questions to allow you to dive into what research you can do on a company and really showcase who you are in the research that you've done and why you want to fit into that organization. We'll see other situational or traditional questions about, what are your 3 strengths or what are your 3 weaknesses, and you have that. And again, you can use these top 5 to go into those strengths, but I want to talk about how you can infuse the strengths to be able to tell a story with behavioral-based interview questions. And behavioral-based interview questions are very, very, very popular. Sometimes they don't even have that language, but the idea behind a behavioral-based interview question is it's going to say, how did you behave in the past? And that is going to indicate how you will behave or respond in the future. So those questions in behavioral-based interview questions are going to ask questions of, can you tell me about a time where you've had to make a difficult decision? Can you give me an example of a time that you didn't make a deadline? Can you give me an example where you've had to communicate with somebody who had different opinions than you? So we're looking at how did you respond in that past when you're telling the story about that to move forward to indicate how you might behave in the future. And I think of it in terms of concentric circles. So, if you would throw a rock into water, you're going to see rings form. And that bullseye, that main point, is if you can tell a story that directly relates to work experience and a responsibility, perhaps in an internship or a relevant experience. So you are a supply chain major and they ask you, give me about a time where you've had to work with somebody that was different or difficult, and you might be working in a manufacturing environment and you can share that experience. That's really in that concentric circle. Now they ask that same question and you think, gosh, I can't think of a story in my work experience or relevant experience or internship. Well, I say then go to the next ring out, and that might be your class involvement or in your classes. Can you think of a story or an example in one of your classes, maybe a group project or in a classroom or in a different topic area? Nope, you still can't think of a circle or a story in that circle. Then we can go to the next circle out. So we're getting further away from that bullseye or that sweet spot. But in that circle, we might be able to talk about something maybe in our personal lives. So I can't think of a story as it relates to work, but I can think of something that maybe was on the soccer team and how I responded with a difficult person or didn't meet a deadline or had to show perseverance on the soccer team or with a different club or organization, or maybe it was in high school. And you still can't think of anything, and then you go out to that further concentric circle and you think, oh, you know what, I have a story about this in my own personal life, maybe with my family or with some of my relationships that might really demonstrate how I responded. So again, think of things that are going to be relevant to the position, and that's going to be in that bullseye, in that concentric circle, and then move beyond that to think of where your story identification is going to come from. And you'll see this in the Clifton Strengths worksheet. That's part of the responsibility, or it was part of the homework for next week, is how can you develop stories that relate to your strengths that really talk to and answer common interview questions. So I know students struggled with this a little bit, and it is new and it's very foreign to some. So I want to point out a couple of different resources. The first resource is in the Get Hired Guide. Chapter 9 really goes into behavioral-based interview questions, and there's some great resources. In fact, there's a good, a mediocre, and then an excellent example of kind of a situation or behavioral-based story, and you can see how you can chunk it out into that star. Also in Handshake, if you go under Career Center and you see resources, and there is a tool called Big Interview. Big Interview is really great as it relates to helping students prep. Sometimes students are a little bit awkward and it feels uncomfortable using it, but it's an online tool that allows you to think of an industry, think of types of interview questions that you might get asked, and it allows you to pick that industry or area. What kind of interview are you at? Is it, a screening interview? Is it the top 10 interview questions for your industry? Is it a final or second round interview? Then you can pick the person, and there's a kind of a talking head, if you will, that will ask you a question. It's also there, and then you can record yourself answering that. And if you get stuck on that, you're going to see that there's a little tips button that will give you some ideas as to how to improve. So that's in Big Interview. There's also a document that's in Big Interview called The Ultimate Guide to Interview Questions. And it really, I think it's a guide, and it says chapter 7, but it's really just a couple paragraphs. So don't be overwhelmed when I say chapter 7. But it really gives you some great examples of how to nail and ace a star interview. So use that as a resource as you're creating your behavioral-based interview questions, because in the worksheet we're going to ask you, come up with questions. The Get Hired Guide has a big list of questions, but you can Google behavioral-based interview questions for accounting students or supply chain students or HR students, and you're going to get a whole bunch of them. And I'm excited to read your story. So let's move into what an example of that interview would be. So here you can see, tell me about a time when you've had to work closely with somebody whose personality was different than yours. And you're going to work, okay, personality, different. It's probably pulling into my harmony strength. And when we look at that, we're going to see situation. When I worked with company XYZ on a team. Now, when you're filling out the story in the worksheet, I don't want you to use dots and I don't want you to use X. I really want you to fill that in and really get in to tell me what I would term as meat and potatoes of that situation. You're going to see that they're going to ask you about the task, and you were planning for an event. In this case, it might be the career fair. Here's the action step. What did you have to do? You had to set up a meeting, fill in those details, and then here's the result. Carried out with no problems, attendance was great, and cohesion. When you're typing this up, it's a Word document in the worksheet. I want you to really think of the story, think of how it would sound when you're reading it. And on average, I would say when you're reading it, it should take about a minute to answer. When you're developing your story and giving the details, it's about a minute, and really go into some of those details so the employer knows full well. Another example that I use is, can you tell me about a time when you've needed to make an ethical decision or had an ethical dilemma? And a student could, in a kind of poor answer, say, oh yes, there was an ethical dilemma in my accounting class, and I'm happy to say that I made the right decision and I didn't cheat on that test. Well, that's good, but we don't know any of the details, and you haven't brought the employer along. So the example that I use is, you could say, my sophomore year, there was a really difficult accounting class. In fact, the pass rate on that class was only about 65%, and it was a really big struggle. And it was really important. We needed it for admission into the College of Business. And there happened to be an advanced copy of the exam made. So now I'm getting into this task piece over here. So I had to pass a test, and there was an exam, and an advanced copy was made. So I had to make a decision of whether I was going to look at that advanced copy or if I wasn't, and how I was going to move forward. So I decided not to look at the advanced copy. So there's my decision and my action. As a result, I received a 65% on the test, where others had 80 and 90%. It was at that point that the faculty member was thinking, wait a second, something must be up. And so they found out about it. And I'm happy to report that, some of the students perhaps had to go to the Dean of Students and we had to retake the test. I didn't have to face those because I was ethical up front, didn't look at that advanced copy, and knew that my studying and even the 65% in the long run was going to be the better result and give me the better outcome. So you can kind of see how I was telling a story there, hitting on the situation, the task, the action, and result. So I'm super excited to look at yours as we read them and grade them. If you have any questions as you're creating them, again, use the Get Hired Guide Chapter 9 and the Guide to Interviews, Behavioral-Based Interviews. That's under Resources and, on Handshake and Big Interview. So I've alluded to this, but let me give you the details. There is a STAR worksheet in D2L. It is under Content and then Assignment Criteria, and it's called the STAR worksheet. It's due February 17th. It's a Word document that you can download, and you can type your answers into each of the squares and the boxes. Remember, I want complete sentences and a real story, and you can use the Get Hired Guide in Chapter 9 to help you with that, or that Handshake Big Interview resource as well. Reach out if you have any questions on this as you're moving forward. And then for next week, which is really today, but it's the 17th, we want to make sure that you are registered in Handshake for your mock interview, your dining with professional, and your resume review appointments. So several of those happened today, and it was a pleasure to meet with those that we met with this week. So we'll see more of you next week and the following week. But please make sure that you have a mock interview and a dining with professional. You can confirm your event registration if you go into Handshake and you type on events. Over on the right, it should show you your upcoming interview schedule and your upcoming events. So again, reach out if you have any questions about this. And I look forward to reading your assignments and your STAR worksheets. So hopefully that will help you with the mock interviews moving forward and any other scheduled interviews you have for Business 284. I also wanted to bring to your attention that there is an academic open house for the College of Business. Our Quest students are typically encouraged to attend. And if this isn't required, it's not mandatory, but what a great opportunity for you to connect with some faculty in the College of Business, see what clubs and organizations. You can see the outline is Tuesday, and it happens to be really right after class. So I encourage you, if you are in econ, thinking business analytics, not really sure if marketing or sales, go out and talk to those faculty members and upper class students that will be there talking about the major and employer opportunities. The clubs and organizations will also be there. You're, again, not required, but what a great opportunity for you to connect with our faculty and look at the resources that we have in the College of Business to support you. You can also see when clubs and organizations are meeting and if they have some, maybe printed materials or topics. There's fun prizes from our employer sponsors that hire